the FBI is saying one thing, then it's saying another, and then it's saying something else again. There's the thought that maybe these two attacks, New Orleans and Las Vegas, were connected, and now we're learning that perhaps they were not, although these two individuals actually did train at Fort Bragg and were allegedly in not the same camp, but in similar areas where they were deployed. So there are a lot of questions right now. Maybe you had, obviously you have two crazies. Maybe one was a guy who was upset because his wife was breaking up with him. The other was a jihadist. There's a lot we still don't know right now, but I just felt like it was important to come on and see you all. Thank you. I know it's an earlier time there, if you would, in the USA, but again, there's so much mixed information. Like, on the one hand, we had the information less than 24 hours ago that they thought somehow this individual, this jihadist, was not working alone, that there were actually 3 men and a woman that had been seen placing explosives around New Orleans. And yet that suddenly turned into, no, we do think he's working alone. But then again, you got to remember, initially they told us no terror attack here, despite the fact that the New Orleans police chief said, yeah, it was being investigated as a terror attack. Let me show you what the woman who's the FBI spokesperson, when she first came out, nose ring and all, to brief everybody.
Patrick said we'll be taking over the investigative lead for this event. This is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found, and we are working on confirming if this is a viable device or not. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we're asking everyone to stay away from Bourbon Street, specifically from Canal Street to St. Anne. That is my ask, once again.
Okay, so that was sort of the initial take on things. No, no terror attack, nothing to see here. Or at least, there's something to see, obviously, horrible, tragic situation, but they didn't actually admit that it was a terror attack, which I found kind of strange at the time. You had the police saying one thing, and then you had this woman saying something totally different from the FBI. But then I thought, well, maybe they're trying to actually bide some time. Like, you think about how in any investigation like this, you don't want to necessarily play your whole hand. You run the risk, of course, that if there were going to be more events, that you are actually letting your enemy know what's happening. So it's entirely possible that they were just trying to run scared a little bit, but then they flipped it around by within hours, I would say, or at least I'm on European time, so it's a little bit it's all like happening one event after the other, but within maybe 12 hours or so they had a different explanation. Here we go.
Subject's vehicle, other potential IEDs also located in the French border. As of now, 2 IEDs have been found in the United States. The FBI's collision bomb local law enforcement partners have been working to determine any of these devices are viable, and they'll work to render those devices safe. The FBI, we are working with our partners to investigate this as an act of terrorism.
Yeah, okay, so then you could see. Let's see if we can hear her again.
Associates, we're working to ensure that there is no further threat. We do not believe that Jabbar was solely responsible. We are aggressively running down every lead, including those of his known associates. That's why we need the public's help. We are asking if anybody has any interactions with Samsud Dim Jabbar in the last 72 hours that you contact us. The FBI is asking the public's help. We're asking anyone who has information, video, or pictures to provide it to the FBI. We have set up a digital tip line as well as...
Okay, so that was the story, as of 12 hours ago or 20 hours ago, and now they're saying, no, they think he actually worked it alone. But this was the initial reaction. Again, you saw from that spokesperson who, by the way, had kind of gotten things together, gotten rid of the nose ring, which incidentally, not that I'm going to nitpick, but that's against regulations. Like, it's against the rules. You can't actually have any facial piercings. I think they allow earrings for female trainees, but that's it. So for some reason she was skirting around away from the rules. She did lose the earring in the the nose by the next day. Here we go. Here's a Fox report saying that they had been successfully able to deactivate a couple of explosives.
Detonation, and this is again from a Louisiana State Police bulletin. Also, a corresponding remote control discovered inside the vehicle. Now, this is also significant. According to the same intelligence bulletin, surveillance footage, Molly, captured 3 men and a woman placing one of multiple improvised explosive devices. So certainly more to this investigation. President Biden, meanwhile, is not here at the White House today on this first day of 2025. He's at the presidential retreat in the Maryland Mountains, Camp David. However, he is continuing to get updates from his team, from the Homeland Security Department, from the Justice Department, also from the FBI. I want to read something that the president actually, I want to go to, rather, some sound from President Biden on the tarmac before he took off from Delaware to go to Camp David. Watch this.
I've spoken to every member of the agency, from the CIA to our national security team, to our FBI, NSC, and we're gathering all the and I spent a lot of time with the mayor. Actually, it's one of anger and frustration. Thank you.
He didn't say much there. He said he would say more later, but he did release a statement more thoroughly that says, in part, my heart goes out to the victims and their families who were simply trying to celebrate the holiday. There's no justification for violence of any kind, and we will not tolerate any attack on any of our nation's communities. Meanwhile, the man who's moving into this White House behind me in less than 3 weeks, President-elect Donald Trump, put out a statement on social media earlier today that reads as follows. When I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in our country, that statement was constantly refuted by Democrats and the fake news media, but it turned out to be true. The crime rate in our country is at a level that nobody has ever seen before. Our hearts are with all the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department. The Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil. Now, the former president said criminals coming in a statement, meaning into our country, but to be clear, Molly and Brian, the suspect was born in the United States. He served in the United States Army. He was a veteran. The FBI is the lead agency in this investigation, going through the social media.
Okay, so that now has become a very big issue, right? The fact that he was from Texas, that he was an American, and so the leftist media is trying to say, see, it's Americans that are the problem, we're the problem. I would still go back to this, that it's Islamic terror that's the problem, frankly. I mean, this guy had been radicalized, and it wasn't American patriotism that was radicalizing him. It was jihadist terror. Incidentally, just a little factoid for you. Do you know that was like Biden's 570th day of vacation? He spent 40% of his time in the Oval Office on vacation. I don't know how you do that. Like, I'm on vacation, sort of. I'm actually doing a little reporting while I'm here. But I'm still with you, right? In other words, I'm still working. I never take vacation. And I'm not the president of the United States. I mean, this is sort of unbelievable to me. So he had to fly back in, et cetera, et cetera. Here's one of my concerns, that they're just all over the place. And I'm going to get to this in a second, because I see some of you in the live chat are voicing concern about this, that there's been such an emphasis and such a focus on things that don't matter, like DEI in the FBI, that we've gotten away from actually doing things like hunting terrorists. Like, why didn't we have more leads on this guy? Why didn't we know anything? For goodness sakes, he was in the Army. Did no one ever see that maybe there was a problem with him? That's concerning. But first, over to CNN. They've got one of their guests on there who's an intel expert, pointing out that, things are really shifting a lot, and he's a little surprised. He points this out. He's a little surprised that on the one hand, they came out and said, no, it's not terror, and then they came out and said it's terror. I mean, wow.
Now they're saying, this is what we have. It's why every time I have ever done this in my life, I have started out by saying, the information we're going to give you is preliminary. You can expect parentheses, the first story is never right.
Yeah, I mean,
You can expect it to shift and
as
change,
journalists
but I'm going to
understand
tell
that
you what we have
extremely well,
now.
but
Here's what we know, here's what we don't know, here's what we'll get back
I
to.
do think that there was a definitiveness to some of this information. At the beginning, they said it's not a terror attack. Again, there's
That one I can't
in
figure
law.
out. You got a truck with a giant ISIS flag flying down the street.
I'm used to law enforcement. I'm used to law enforcement saying, "Hey, we can't give you that answer right now. The investigation's ongoing." That answer was always available to them, and they didn't take it at some key junctures.
It's kind of like when the U.S. government said that what happened in Benghazi was due to a video. Do you remember when that happened in government?
It's always a choice to say, "We don't know."
Yes, and I was spokesperson twice in the U.S. government. I have been on the other side of being pummeled by the media to say, like, this is breaking, what do you know? And the answer is always, this is developing, we are aware, we're going to figure it out, and we're going to keep you updated. But it is, you see it happen all the time when agencies get too tempted to want to appear on top of things, and then you end up having a first story that's wrong. But that's never acceptable in any crisis.
All right.
They have to.
Real quick, Scott.
They have to assess what is the priority, what is the most significant threats here that we need to address there, and for, like you said,
Okay, so, sure, they don't have their act together. This is fluid, I get it. A lot of like changing parts, a lot of different information out, but it still seems like who's on first, right? Like this FBI doesn't really know what's going on. And I have a feeling that there's a reason for that, guys. I hate to say this, but you know what? You've got a woke FBI that was so obsessed for the last 4 years with trying to be as woke as it possibly could be and wear the, the right, Taylor Swift bracelets. Believe it or not, we have pictures of that. New Orleans FBI tweeting out how, they're proud about their Swiftie bracelets. For goodness sakes, it tells you something about what was going on in the operation. They were more obsessed with being this, that, and the other and everything to everybody instead of actually hunting for the bad guys. Take a look at this. I saw this on Twitter at the FBI. This is the FBI June in 2024. Not too long ago, okay? Not too long ago at the FBI. We know that diversity makes us stronger. During Pride Month, the FBI celebrates our I gotta get this right, LGBTQIA+. Whew, can we add like a few more letters? We'll get the whole alphabet. Colleagues' contributions to our country and our mission. Learn more about the Bureau's diversity and inclusion initiatives here. Pride, 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 pride. And then this one in late October, FBI New Orleans thanks all our new friends, Swifties, who provided a little extra gear to our folks this weekend. Everything goes with camo. Oh, please, oh, please, oh, please. You guys are not doing yourselves any favors, okay? Not doing yourselves any favors. You are... definitely, look, I want to thank all law enforcement. Let me make that very clear. But I'm also going to say something that some might consider harsh, but your job as an FBI agent is not to wear a Swiftie bracelet and tweet about it. Your job as an FBI agent is not to be all things to all people and go on and on about pride and diversity and this, that, and the other. And don't get me wrong, I actually think diversity is helpful in any organization, but that can't be your priority, okay? Your priority needs to be keeping people safe. And so you failed at the most basic priority. But then again, I see how it happened. Because Biden was off there telling you to do God knows what. I mean, when they were going after, there were reports of this, Catholics that went to Mass in Latin. Come on. Here's KT McFarland, a friend of mine, former national security director in the Trump administration. She served in a lot of administrations, Nixon, Reagan, brilliant person on policy. And she was on Newsmax the other day, and she just ripped them, as they should be ripped, to shreds for their lack of focus over the last 4 years.
Right. What does our intelligence community focus on? What's the FBI focus on? White supremacists. Housewives going to school board meetings. They're not focused on keeping the American people safe. They've taken their eye off the ball. They're focused on DEI. That's where they put their resources. That's where they put their attention. That's where they put their focus. What fell out at the bottom? Looking and protecting the Americans. These are all American citizens, these two alleged attackers. We don't even know about the people who've sneaked across the border and what their objectives are. It's got to be a refocus because, more and more Americans are going to die. President Trump is right. We've got to focus on the national security of this country, put American security first, and not be totally distracted by all these other agendas that the far left and the woke Democrats have been pushing.
Here. right? Here. So KT getting it totally right. You can't be going after moms at the school board meetings because they don't like the quote unquote literature, which no one should like, that gets put on display. Absolutely unbelievably bad stuff in so many public schools. And so parents are speaking up and they're like, how dare you? Somehow you're a threat to the system. And the real threat, they were completely missing the whole time. The real threat was happening just as we saw it unfold. And the concern now might there be other events? How linked are these two? We don't really entirely know all this information yet. And I'm hesitant to speculate about it because I want more. And so this is the kind of thing where, time will tell and we'll get more in the coming days. But in the meantime, what do you have? Oh, you've got a whole bunch of wokies there on the left in the media trying to use the fact that, these guys were in the military, they were American, as a reason to bash Trump again because Trump is making the point that you can't have all these people flooding in across the border. Look, if they're working with anyone, who's to say they weren't working with people who had come in illegally across the border? These are still real concerns. And you got to be concerned about the jihadist radicalism that's happening here, or mental health radicalism that's causing people to do just heinous, horrific things. Here's MSNBC trying to shift the blame. They've got this New York Times columnist on with Joy Reid. I'm telling you, they're all about to lose their jobs. But another story for another day. I think I did that story just the other day, right? Just on the New York Times sinking. They only have 200 and some odd thousand subs, down 13-14% in the last year. You get Joy Reid, who's going to get her salary cut because MSNBC in the spinoff is not going to be able to fork over $3 million, which is $3 million too many for Joy Reid. I don't even know if she lasts, frankly. But let's get to what her guest is saying.
Tragedy of all of this, right? There are real tragedies. There will always be crime. Unfortunately, what we try to do is to keep the crime as low as possible. All different kinds of people will commit crimes. The problem here is that you jump on one sort of crime, one crime committed by one name that sounds exotic, one brown face, rather than looking at all of the domestic terror that we face, including what the FBI says is a really big problem, which is young white men in America. We need to look at all of our domestic terrorism and say this all is a problem.
Indeed, exactly. And it is Americans that we need to be talking about. This is about us. Charles Blow, former...
So you hear the little dig there. She can't help herself. She's got to get that one in. It's Americans that we need to be worried about. It's not the people that are coming across the border that could be in cahoots with Al-Qaeda or ISIS or anything like that. It just seems to me a little bit logical that you want to be worried about everybody, do you not? Especially given what we've seen happen there in New York City, the heinous crime on the subway. Listen. There's a lot to be worried about. There's a lot of reasons why we're very thankful right now. We're getting a new president in charge of things come January 20th, right? The countdown is on. It can't happen soon enough. But, here's somebody on Twitter pointing out, it's interesting that these are two American veterans that have been radicalized to commit acts of terror on the same day. Now there's speculation that one of the guys was just going through his own personal issues and maybe was trying to send some kind of signal to his wife because she didn't like Trump, and so he drove a Cybertruck, which, by the way, way to go on the Cybertruck. Talking about a commercial for Elon. The Cybertruck contained the explosive, so it didn't actually blow up the building. Anyway, that was amazing, but it's not clear if he was an Islamic terrorist. It's pretty clear that the other guy who totally was radicalized. I went and watched an old YouTube video of him. He used to be a property manager back in the day. He was like an IT specialist in the Army and did some HR stuff and then was running property. But he was down on his luck and turned to Islamic terror. And it is now in the state of a situation in which authorities are looking into the mosque, which they believe did radicalize him. Look, this stuff is tricky. It's a religion that it is, in my estimation, filled with sort of an acceptance for violence at its core. In other words, violence is justified in that religion. It's one of the reasons why a friend of mine, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, who is a reformist for Islam, and he's actually a real doctor, but you might see him on television a lot. He does a lot of the networks, and he's been on my show many times over the years. He's talked about the importance of reforming Islam so that you have a religion that is really about religion itself and helping people as opposed to converting at the sword, etc. So there's a lot within there, embedded within there, that gets highly weaponized, if you would. And that's a whole other podcast, and we could certainly do a lot on Islam and the danger of radicalization within Islam. But that's the concern here. These two guys, they were both American veterans. They both committed these acts on the exact same day. What are the chances of that? What are the chances that they served at the same military base, Fort Bragg? For those of you that are familiar with Fort Bragg, you probably know it's just absolutely massive. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, military base in the U.S. So a lot of people that have served in the military have been at Fort Bragg at one point in time. But they're also pointing out that the guy who was the would-be assassin, remember Ryan Roth, who was out there on the golf course down at Mar-a-Lago, that he had actually spent a lot of time on the Fort Bragg premises as well, apparently trying to recruit fighters for Ukraine. So all just kind of interesting to think about. And again, I want to be careful and cautious about speculation at this moment, but as we sort of draw lines and dots and connections, you can just envision, right, the FBI board where they're looking at, well, this and this and this. And there's some things that we are trying to piece together at this moment. I've got more on that, plus Elon Musk coming to the rescue here, piecing things together himself with that Cybertruck. He's working on getting the video. More on that in just a second, but first a shout out to one of our great sponsors here. You can see this is a show on the fly. I normally have a very pretty graphic for our friends over at American Heart for Gold, but today you just go to Trish Loves Gold. You can text Trish, my name, to 65532. Again, text Trish to 65532, or call them at 1-888-495-1115. You can go to Trish Loves Gold. Kind of has a nice ring to it, right? Trish does love gold. TrishLovesGold.com to get more information about how you can up to $15,000 in free silver for qualifying purchases of gold with American Heart for Gold. So again, TrishLovesGold.com. All of this right now, as I come to you live from Zermatt, Switzerland, you can see the Matterhorn right behind me. I really wanted to show you that, so I'm out on the balcony. It's getting cold, and then the sun is coming in funny directions, but it's worth it because this is a big story, and I think we just need to be clued in and continuing the coverage here, as tragic and as sort of mysterious as this is.